Tonight, Daddy, is the beginning of, well, it's not the first night of Adar. Tonight's the 30th of Shvat. So it means the first of Adar will be Shabbos. So Adar this year is coinciding entirely with March. The 1st of March is the 1st of Adar, right? So March is the 1st of Adar? Yeah. So it works out. It was like that with January also. We almost had 3 straight months, but the problem is the Hebrew months, the lengths were 29, 30, 29, right? That's the length of alternating. And the Gregorian months were 31, 28, now going to be 31. But 31 plus 28 is 59. That's the same length as 2 full Hebrew months. So once again, the Hebrew month is starting when the secular month is starting. This is the only time you could have it happen like that. January 1st was the first of Teves, was the first of Teves, and now the 1st of March will be the 1st of Adar. But also, unfortunately, the Adar is coinciding with basically Ramadan. I think Ramadan starts tomorrow night also. So watch out. The Ramadan Bombathon begins, and as usual, we pray that everybody have a safe and quiet Ramadan. We wish that on all our neighbors, and that we hope that, God willing, this coming month will be Nafilchu, a lot less Ramadan and a lot more Adar. I'm even young. Now, I was also thinking about Holocaust theology. I told some guys a few years ago, we were learning a little bit of history. We got to World War II and the Holocaust. I said from, let's say, I think the perspective of the Nevi'im, Auschwitz was the peak of Gullus. That is, being in Gullus basically is Holocaust. Just the only question is to what degree. It's not natural. It's a punishment, and it's not right. And it just means that for a while, the Europeans, well, every now and then they had their ups and downs. Sometimes they were being really severe with us, and sometimes they weren't. Sometimes there was a respite. We said earlier today. Sometimes they had quiet times, but those were not meant to be. That was just there to fool you, or perhaps lull you into a sense of complacency. Really, Auschwitz was what the essence of the Gullus. And it was only when they got to that peak and Jewish people, a critical mass of Jewish people realized. What? Yes, N-E-D-A-R-D-I-R. Okay, the apex. It was the apex of the Holocaust. Okay, we don't need to play thesaurus games though. That's what it was. That's what the Gullus resulted in. And when enough people finally realized that, even beforehand, people were waking up to the fact that Gullus means Holocausts. Because people woke up with the Kishinev Pogrom, for example. That's when the Zionism started, Herzl and everything, right? There were wake-ups. Jabotinsky, who we don't necessarily agree with on everything, he was the one who went to Europe, beforehand, telling everybody it's about to happen. It's about to happen. He didn't have to be a Navi. You didn't have to be a Chacham. A Chacham, I mean a Torah scholar. You just have to have your eyes open. That's what the result is going to be. So before the Holocaust, people were waking up. After the Holocaust, everybody was shocked awake. Good. So results came. The peak of Oslo is now, this current war. The war is still ongoing. The people in charge, for whatever reason, have basically engineered an amazing thing, a surrender, okay? Not just a ceasefire, but a surrender, okay? A complete surrender in order to give the enemy everything he could possibly wanted so that this can go on further. And to reduce Jewish territory, reduce Jewish population, to harm the Jewish people. The worship of the Baal, the main idolatry of the Canaanites. What was that? What was the Baal? He was the storm god, the god of fertility and rain. And that's why Eliyahu came and told the people when it became a mass movement of worship of the Baal, which wasn't even the majority of the Jewish people or the Israelites at the time, but it had the official sanction of the government. The king was a Baal worshiper and sponsored it. That became his new religion. So Eliyahu's response was, watch this, God will shut off the rain. You worship the Baal. The Baal is specifically the god of rain, right? And fertility. I'm going to shut off the rain. until you people realize specifically davening to this God ain't going to help you. Just to show you. Yeah, it's no. Hold on a second. No, I don't want to upgrade my Riverside. So too, today they don't worship a foreign god. Atheism is just kfira. That's the way the Rambam would have it. Atheism isn't avodah zarah. It just works. It's kofar b'ikr. Kofar b'ikr is denying God. So this it used to be idolatry. If people wanted to rebel against God, the main avenue for that was idolatry, right? Various forms of idolatry. And by the way, it was mostly just a means to an end. What was the means? Being able to satisfy one's yetzer hara, right? So Jews wanted to engage in promiscuity and fornication, so you worship the Baal and related Canaanite fertility gods. Why? Because that gives you license to do that. And if you want to do like the Greeks, so you ostensibly give lip service to their pantheon, so that you could, be a Greek. That's what they did, and that's what Misyavnim did, and so forth. Many Jews who unfortunately became Christian in the last few hundred years, they didn't do it because they were really convinced that JC was the real deal. Instead, why they do it? Access. Yeah, to fit in. Access to the society. Okay? That's it. They needed. They had a taiva for certain things. I'm not going to judge them. I'm just saying that's why they did it. Today, the avodah zarah, or the like I said, sorry, the kfira that's specifically that religion, that is the state religion, the official religion of the political class, the ruling class here in Israel, right? In America, the religion was what? It was climatism, but then it got merged with this neo-Marxist, leftist, whatever, wokeist, which is dying, thank God. Okay? It lasted barely a decade, thank God. It's gone. It's going to crumble, just like communism and everything, all the other isms before it. The current anti-religion, I'd say, of the ruling class, and you know who they are, is a kfira that doesn't have a necessarily name to God. It says in Devarim, in Hazinu, Haim kin uni below el, right? Yasuni Bavlihem. Vani achisem or achniim below am. Okay? The exact pasuk. What does it mean? Kin uni below el. They made me jealous with a non-God. Okay? So up until the modern era, you could have said that the reference here, this non-God, is a reference to anything that's avodah zarah. Avodah zarahs are not actually God. But if you read it, or you can read it also as no, kin uni v'lo el means they made me jealous with atheism. They don't have God at their side. And by the way, that's also alluded to in the adjacent parshiot. Al ki eina lohai b'kirbi. Okay, God is not with me. God is not among me. Just no God, not necessarily a specific false God with a lowercase g, but no uppercase God. So it says, so I'll get them with a non-nation. A non-nation. So what's it a reference to? So in the olden days, it said it's to the Romans. The Romans were considered a proper nation by Chazal. It says they didn't have a proper culture, even a proper language. Unlike the Greeks, who had a real tradition and a real respectable language that Chazal actually saw, they considered the Romans to be just, culturally inferior to the Greeks. I guess historians would say the same thing also. Okay, so nowadays we see that this pasuk actually has taken on a new meaning. Kin uni below el. The problem with the religious people in the state of Israel, the false religion, is it's just atheism, no el. So God's going to attack them with a lo am, a non-national entity. Okay, and the current makeshift national entity that's being used as a bludgeon. Okay, so that's a problem. What are these people actually? By the way, what are they? They exist as human beings, unfortunately, which means they're chayiv misa because they're responsible for their crimes. What are they? Various groups, tribes that never had any real national affiliation one with the other. Hamulas, shvatim, Bedouin types. So they've been basically created into this one national entity by, I guess, opportunistic political actors for their own purposes. That's why they tell them they have to stay in Gaza. They got to stay in Gaza. That's their where they are. But it wasn't Gaza their prison? Weren't they all refugees? They're supposed to be from somewhere else, and that they want out. No, they have to stay there because they're the natives. They're both the natives yet refugees who ended up in a prison there. Okay. The only reason why, by the way, all sorts of people across the political streams, among ostensibly our enemies and among our friends, within, they say they have to stay there. So our political class wants them to stay put, is doing nothing to just help them get away. And the Egyptians want to keep them there. And the Jordanians, the ones closest to them, ostensibly the ones who are most ethnically close to them. I'm sure the Saudis also. Who's around here? Who's the most like them? Or the Lebanese? You think they would put them there? No, of course not. So this is the pasuk coming true today. Okay, so the peak of modern Jewish atheism is now. Let's start with Oslo. Oslo is the contraction. It used to be, let's say, early state of Israel history. What happens is great things, historically great things, that those who appreciate it, if you're a religious person, a good religious person, so you realize it's God's hand, right? God has brought this about. Think like Rabbi Soloveitchik and others. And I would imagine that many people had a problem with that you see that Am Yisrael is succeeding and their new holidays. Do you know how many rabbinic types I've met who are uncomfortable with the observance of Yom Ha'atzmaut? They just have such a problem with it. I don't want it. What were they fighting against? Think 30 years ago. Think 20 years ago in yeshiva. What was it? They don't want to thank God for that which is apparently good for us. And if you have the many, at least normal Jews and great Jews see as at least harbingers of a messianic era. Why are they so much against it? What is it emotionally that they have against it? You could be neutral, but why are they so much against it? Am Yisrael was expanding, right? Great victories, and people established holidays. This is and for some reason, my feeling is, like I mentioned last week, I'm not necessarily pro Rabbi Gorin, but I think his biography is a tragic story that encapsulates this idea, this complete messianic view of modern Jewish history, and how it was squashed, okay, by forces that didn't want messianic Judaism, the good type of messianic Judaism, and he ended up being defeated by that. So you have the unholy alliance, let's say, after the 6-Day War between Jews who do not want redemption to happen. They don't want a Temple Mount, for example, and anti-religious secularists and atheists like Moshe Dayan. So they come together and shake hands against the Jews who are messianic. What's the principle, the paradigm case of them meeting together in order to harm Jews and bring about the contraction of this great Jewish expansion? Yeah, giving up the Temple Mount. See, how could you agree with Moshe Dayan? Moshe Dayan, that's what he hates the most. This is what he's running away from. I don't want God and religion and thanking God in my state, so I have to get rid of the Temple Mount. And you have the religious Jewish establishment also. Yeah, that's what we want. We'll combine. We'll give it a religious stamp of approval. No Jews here. We don't want any of this. So what happens? Oslo basically was the contraction. Okay, there was expansion. Now there's a great contraction. What's going on? Am Yisrael is basically saying, what happens? Look, if you don't have Torah, if you don't have God, eventually you're going to give up on Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. There's the God of Israel. There's the Torah of Israel, right? Well, there's God of Israel, Torah of Israel, people of Israel, land of Israel. All four. So if you first give up on the God of Israel, that's what they gave up first. But many of them kept the Torah of Israel. By Torah, I mean even just the basics. They study Tanakh. Ben Gurion types may have given up on God, but they believed in Torah, at least Tanakh, maybe not Torah Shebaal Peh, but that was something to which they're connected, and to Jewish culture, to the language. But then that connection died. And then they lost the connection to Eretz Yisrael. First God of Israel left, and Torah of Israel, now they lost Eretz Yisrael. They're willing to give up on that. And eventually they're willing to give up on Am Yisrael, the Jewish people as a whole. They become traitors to their own people. So Oslo basically meant, we don't want to win wars anymore. We don't like this whole idea that Am Yisrael gets attacked and defeats its enemies and seizes territory and creates new celebrations to thank God for these miraculous events. We want to run away from that. And the disengagement was just a continuation of that. I should have realized 20 years ago, of course the disengagement would happen. You know why? Because this is the path that Oslo takes. Oslo leads to the disengagement. And the disengagement leads to the war we're currently in intifadas. So now we are beset. There's actually a war. The war with Egypt is going to happen. I'm surprised people even come here nowadays. With the Egyptian militarization in the Sinai. They already broke the peace treaty, right? There and what's going on? They're attacking from the north, but how is Hezbollah defeated? They had a big funeral and all that. It seems they could fill a stadium. The stadium is still standing. Why wasn't that stadium leveled? How many anti-Semites were there? How many arch anti-Semites were there? That would have been if I were in charge, I would have put all my firepower there. That could have been amazing. That could have saved us who knows how many other massacres. And now we're in the midst of a war. This is just a brief quiet for propaganda and to lull people, like we said, into a complacency. But this is the peak of Oslo. And it's not even, I don't even think we've reached the peak of Oslo. Because the point of all this, where this all leads to, just like Gullus leads to Auschwitz, this trend, unless we do something major to stop it, will lead to what? Further loss of territory and life. And the opposite of establishing new holidays, because they don't want to win a war. You have to win a war in order to make a holiday. Some people's versions of Alanism is about Val Milchamos, right? Purim is about that. There has to be a war. You can't celebrate Purim. How many Jews are going to celebrate Purim two weeks from today and be completely, blissfully unaware of what they're celebrating? If they were to be asked to execute a Purim today, would they be there? Would they? Even if they were under threat, let's say there was a Haman. There is a Haman today. There are many Hamans. And they're doing what they're doing. Just maybe they've even set a date. Maybe they've even set this Purim like they've had before. They've set the 13th of Adar to be the day they're going to attack us. Or the 14th or the 15th, now that they know it's a holiday. Maybe that's what they're plotting right now. And how many Jews would say, we're going to rise up and turn it back on them? And then we're going to celebrate. We're stuck. Okay? So unless we turn this around, this Adar, we will get exactly more of what we've been seeing until this point. Loss of territory, loss of life. And that's why I just don't understand.